High in the mist-covered mountains of the eastern Andes, a confederation of tribes once ruled a vast, fertile land. The Muisca Confederation, rich in gold, knowledge, and spiritual traditions, was a beacon of power and influence long before the Spanish set foot on South American soil. But how did this decentralized confederation become so powerful without massive armies or monumental stone cities like the Inca or the Maya? And why have so few people heard of this remarkable civilization today? Despite their relative anonymity today, the Muisca played a vital role in pre-Columbian South America. From the 6th century, their influence spread across modern-day Colombia, organized not as a single empire, but as a network of allied chiefdoms united by trade, religion, and diplomacy. They didn't build great cities of stone, but their power lay elsewhere. Among the fertile valleys, they transformed into thriving agricultural hubs, and in the gold that would later lure European invaders. Before we explore their legendary gold, let's uncover how the Muisca built a society that thrived in the heights of the Andes through the mastery of trade and agriculture. The Muisca's rise to power began not with conquest, but with innovation. Living in the challenging environment of the Andes, they developed sophisticated agricultural techniques that allowed them to cultivate maize, potatoes, and quinoa at high altitudes, crops that fed their growing population and allowed them to prosper. Their mastery of irrigation and terracing transformed their rugged landscape into fertile farmland. By maximizing their agricultural output, the Muisca were able to support large settlements and create surpluses that fueled their thriving trade network. But it wasn't just agriculture that made the Muisca powerful. They were expert traders, connecting their highland territory with coastal, Amazonian, and even Caribbean societies. Through this trade network, the Muisca exchanged emeralds, salt, and gold for goods like obsidian, cotton, and feathers, creating a complex and prosperous economy. But it was not their agriculture or trade that would place the Muisca in the pages of history, it was their gold. Gold that, in the eyes of European explorers, held the key to untold riches. Gold that would birth one of the most enduring legends in history, El Dorado. Yet for the Muisca, gold was far more than a symbol of wealth. It was a bridge to the divine. So what exactly was the truth behind the El Dorado myth, and how did it captivate the imagination of the world? As the Muisca Confederation grew in wealth, their gold artifacts became not just symbols of status, but sacred objects used in religious rituals. And it was these rituals that birthed one of the most captivating legends in history, El Dorado, the city of gold. But was El Dorado truly a city built of gold, or was it something far more mystical, hidden not in stone structures, but in the rituals and beliefs of the Muisca people? For the Muisca, gold was never about material wealth, it was a spiritual symbol, used in their most sacred ceremonies. At the heart of the El Dorado legend lies the ritual of the Zipper, who would cover himself in gold dust and sail into the center of Lake Guatavita. There, he would cast golden treasures into the water as offerings to the gods. This ceremony was more than just a display of wealth. It was an act of devotion to their deities, particularly the sun god Su and the moon goddess Chia. To the Muisca, gold represented the divine power of the cosmos. But when the Spanish conquistadors heard stories of these gold-filled rituals, they misunderstood. They imagined a city, El Dorado, where unimaginable riches could be found, leading them on a frantic and fruitless search across the continent. For years, the Spanish scoured the Andes, convinced that the Muisca's rituals pointed to a hidden city overflowing with gold. But they were chasing a myth, a misunderstanding born from the Muisca's deep spiritual connection to the metal. While the Spanish searched for riches, they couldn't foresee what their arrival would bring, the end of the Muisca Confederation. So how did the Muisca, a peaceful and prosperous society, meet their sudden and tragic fall? In 1537, Spanish conquistador Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada led an expedition into the heart of the Muisca lands, lured by tales of El Dorado. But what he found was not a city of gold, but a confederation of peaceful chiefdoms. The Muisca were unprepared for the violence and diseases that the Spanish brought with them. The Muisca, who had lived in harmony with their environment for centuries, suddenly faced an enemy they could not defeat. not just with swords, but with disease and deception. The Muisca had no standing army, and their confederation was held together by diplomatic alliances, not military might. This made them vulnerable to the tactics of the Spanish, who exploited internal rivalries between the Zipa of Bacata and the Zaque of Hunza. The Spanish used divide and conquer strategies, pitting the Muisca rulers against each other. Within 3 years, the Spanish had captured both leaders, Tisquisusa and Aquiminzaca, and executed them. More devastating than the Spanish swords was the impact of European diseases. With no immunity, the Muisca population was decimated, their society rapidly collapsing under the weight of disease and conquest. By 1540, the Confederation had been all but dismantled. The Muisca, who had thrived for centuries, saw their world unravel in just a few short years. But their story doesn't end with the Spanish conquest. What happened to their culture, their traditions, and their legacy? Though the Muisca Confederation fell to Spanish conquest, their legacy lives on in the highlands of Colombia. Their descendants, the modern Muisca people, are reclaiming their heritage, reviving their language, and preserving their spiritual traditions. The gold that once inspired myths and legends now sits in museums like the famous Gold Museum in Bogotá, where the artistry and craftsmanship of the Muisca people are celebrated. But beyond the artifacts, the Muisca descendants today are reviving their language, their ceremonies, and their connection to the land. The Muisca may have been conquered, but their spirit was never broken. Their connection to the land, to their traditions, and to each other lives on, reminding us that a civilization's true legacy is measured not in gold, but in the lasting impact it leaves on the world. If you want to explore more forgotten civilizations and their legacies, hit the subscribe button and join us as we uncover the hidden stories of history. The Muisca's story is not just one of loss and conquest, it is a story of resilience, one that offers timeless lessons for the modern world. What can we learn from a civilization that thrived without vast cities or massive armies, a society whose strength came from their unity, spirituality, and deep connection to the environment? The Muisca lived in balance with their environment. Their careful stewardship of the land allowed them to thrive in one of the most challenging landscapes on Earth. Their reverence for nature and community resonates with today's challenges of climate change and environmental sustainability. The Muisca's connection to the land offers valuable lessons about living in harmony with nature. Lessons that are increasingly relevant in today's world of environmental crisis. Their peaceful confederation, built on diplomacy and alliances, reminds us of the power of unity, even in the absence of vast empires or centralized power. The Muisca Confederation may have fallen, but their legacy endures. From the myths of El Dorado to the modern revival of their culture, the Muisca are more than a forgotten chapter of history. They are a symbol of resilience, wisdom, and unity. As we explore the stories of ancient civilizations, we realize that their wisdom isn't lost to time. It's waiting for us to rediscover it, learn from it, and carry it into the future. Join us as we continue to uncover the hidden stories of ancient civilizations. Hit subscribe and explore more untold tales of history with us.